Hey everyone, it's your boy Richard Graves from Richard Graves Group. If you haven't taken the time to like and subscribe, please do. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I'm going to talk to you briefly about a subject that we had talked about before, which is this migrant situation. But yesterday, Mayor Johnson from Chicago and the mayor of Denver were on Face the Nation talking about, what's going on, the migrants being shipped to Chicago and Denver and New York, and they had their opinions about stuff, why this is happening. I thought it'd be interesting to hear from Mayor Johnson himself. So without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and let him say what he's going to say, and then I'll have my comments, of course.
Well, what we have is clearly an international and federal crisis that local governments are being asked to subsidize, and this is unsustainable. None of our local economies are positioned to be able to carry on such a mission. And
okay, real quick, he literally just said that this is a federal situation, an international situation that has needs a federal response. He starts off with that, but as he goes on,
and what we have attempted to do is to create structure and some coordination around this humanitarian crisis. And unfortunately, the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, is determined to continue to sow seeds of chaos. And last night and several nights before, a number of buses continue to arrive in the city of Chicago and throughout the country without any coordination. And now he's taken on this very dangerous task of placing individuals on airplanes and flying them into our various cities. This is certainly a matter of not just of our national security, but it's the type of chaos that this governor is committed to administering.
Mr. Mayor of Denver, to be clear here.
Now I'm going to pause that for a minute and talk about what he said. So he did acknowledge that there's a security issue here. All right. And he also acknowledged that, that this is chaotic, but he puts that chaos at the feet of the governor of Texas. And I'm not quite sure that's fair. And I'm not a fan of the governor of Texas, so, I don't know him. I don't know his politics. I do know what's going on from Texas and Arizona, people being sent here. Recall last year all of the criticism that the Democratic Party had when Trump was in office, all the criticism they had for how he was handling the crisis of the migrants. And honestly, I'm not a fan of Trump, so I'm not defending him either. But apparently the Democrats didn't have a plan because President Biden is in office, and we haven't seen anything come from him regarding how this is dealt with at the border. So I don't think it's fair to put this on the feet, right at the feet of the governor of Texas. I think that, we need to look at what the federal response is, what the Biden administration is doing, because ultimately you're going to need a coordinated effort between the states and the federal government and the municipalities that are willing to take refugees in, migrants in. We're going to need that response. And that, again, is on Biden. That is not on the governor of Texas. But let's get to the point. We have to look at why these migrants are coming in the first place. All right. I mean, this is a serious situation that's going on. We're finding out that many of these migrants are coming from, disproportionately from Venezuela now. Now, back in 2014, Venezuela had a serious economic situation. Obviously, the socialist government there, and we know that socialism doesn't work ultimately. And that's a prime example of what happens when you have that type of socioeconomic system in operation. It caused a collapse. It caused shortages in food. People were, trying to, obviously leave the country. And if we look, it looks like about 7.7 million migrants have left Venezuela in recent years to escape the authoritarian rule, the authoritarianism, which tends to come with socialism and communism, and the country's worst economic crisis. That's approximately 25% of the population has left that country. That's a lot of people. For South and Central America, Canada, the United States to absorb. In Chicago, what we have, since August 31st of 2022, Chicago has welcomed over 26,000 new arrivals from the southern border. All right, so let's be real. That's a lot of people. And, Chicago was one of the cities under Mayor Lightfoot that was talking crazy about the border states as far as what they were doing, claiming Chicago being a sanctuary city. Of course, these border states pulled their card because the same problem Chicago's having in trying to find housing and support for these migrants is the same problem that all the border states had, but with a massive amount more migrants crossing the border. Now I'm going to let you guys hear Mayor Brandon Johnson talk a little bit more about the topic, and we'll see what else he has to say.
Of Chicago, you also made the point that when it came to Afghans and Ukrainians, they arrived without a problem in your city, and that you would like to replicate that program for everyone.
That's exactly right. There are 30,000 Ukrainian refugees that are in the city of Chicago right now. The difference is, of course, they were fully supported by the federal government, and they were able to acclimate themselves and integrate into our economy.
Again, he says they were fully supported by the federal government, not, some governor of some state, or not the municipality expected to deal with it, but the federal government.
We have a number of asylum seekers from Central and South America and the continent of Africa. And the question is, why are we not providing that same support and treatment?
Mm-hmm.
Here, look, the bottom line is this. We need Congress to act, and we need them to do it expeditiously. But we cannot have the type of chaos that continues to come from the state of Texas. And clearly, the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, is certainly afraid and mad, but he can't cut his own nose off, right? And so what we're simply saying, what I've done over a month ago, we provided an ordinance that would ultimately provide some structure and some coordination around when buses should arrive. Should not be dropping people off in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, without the type of support that's needed.
Very quickly, before I let you go, I read Mayor Johnson of Chicago, less than 2 weeks ago, a 5-year-old boy died after falling ill at a migrant shelter in your city. What state are people showing up in, and what is the health risk here, if any?
Well, our condolences are still with the family, and we continue to pray for the family who lost their child. I'm a father of 3. This is just an unimaginable pain. But what is very clear is that not only are we providing mental health related services, as well as vaccinations and health screenings, and providing medical health care for these families when they arrive, the moment they get off those buses, we're not seeing that same treatment at the border. In other words, there's no health screenings, no vaccinations. That process at the border is absolutely raggedy and reckless. But we cannot have a governor who decides that he's going to cling to the vestiges of Jefferson Davis when we should be pulling to the hopes and aspirations that were left by Frederick Douglass.
Okay, I'm done. Once he started invoking Jefferson Davis and Frederick Douglass, that's what, unfortunately, what leftists do. They have a lot of things to say when it comes to, trying to get that emotive hyperbole out there to tug at heartstrings as opposed to actually talking about the policy. Now, he did talk about the policy to a degree. He said that this was not happening and that the federal government needed to have a response. He put that on the Congress. However, I put that on the president because the president's the leader of the party and the leader of the country. So being the leader of the Democratic Party and the Democrats in Congress and being the leader of the country, this comes down to Biden. If we got to hire more Border Patrol agents, if we got to hire more judges to hear the cases down there to expedite these cases of these migrants so that they can, be, moved throughout the country appropriately, and if the states, the federal government and the municipalities all talk together and have a coordinated response, then no one's getting overwhelmed if we do it that way. But Texas and Arizona were overwhelmed. They pulled Chicago's card when Mayor Lightfoot was talking about being a sanctuary state. Card got pulled. People still coming. So, he wants to blame the governor, but the governor is going to have the same problem that the city of Chicago has unless the federal government led by Biden does something about it. So that's something we have to think about. Now, I'm going to talk this week. I'm going to probably do these daily and just, try to do them every day and, around the same time, release them so we can talk about current affairs and what's going on. But when you look at the fact that you have about 26,000 migrants have come from South Central America last count, and then you got, 30,000 that are here from Afghanistan and from Ukraine in the city of Chicago, and now they're saying putting these people to work. But my question is, how are we putting these people to work when we have this situation? Black unemployment in the city of Chicago for people between the ages of 20 and 24. Between 2019 and 2021, we're looking at upwards of 57.4%. Now, if we don't have jobs for the people that are already here, where are these jobs coming from for the migrants that are coming? It's either one or two things. The jobs are there and the migrants are getting them and the refugees are getting them, which is a very bad situation. Or the jobs aren't there and these migrants aren't able to get jobs either. Either way, it's a bad situation. But this is something that I would like the African-American community to think about in cities like Chicago and Baltimore, New York, that have similar high unemployment rates for young African-Americans. We have to start thinking about, what's going on and what's the commitment of those governments to the African-American people. African-American people have supported the Democratic Party in these cities pretty much, for the most part, upwards of 90% or more since, the end of the Civil Rights Movement. What are African-Americans getting in return for their loyalty? It doesn't look like they're getting jobs. That's something that we need to discuss. Also, a statistic we need to look at is, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 85,000 African-Americans left Chicago between 2010 and 2020. And that's the second highest rate in the country of migration, or I should say reverse migration, because we know our ancestors came to cities like Chicago, Baltimore, Detroit, and we came up, during the Great Migration for jobs that are apparently no longer there or no longer here. So we got to start thinking. 85,000 people that left. Some of them left to suburban areas. Some of them left to rural Illinois. Some left to, back to our southern roots, back to Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama. Some congregated and have moved to other large cities where opportunities available, be it Dallas or Houston or, New Orleans or Atlanta, Miami, places like that. So we got to ask ourselves a question, what's going on in our cities? And I'm sure that high unemployment rate has a lot to do with some of this crime rates going up in the African-American communities. And so we're going to talk about all that this week. I'm going to leave it at that for now. Again, like I said, I'm going to be on all week. We're going to talk about these issues and try to flesh this stuff out. But, the question I have for Mayor Johnson is he needs to put the onus of this at President Biden's feet, not at the governor of Texas. It's not him who creates federal policy. And even though the Congress does, the Congress needs leadership from the White House. That being said, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. Looking forward to any comments you got, anything anyone needs to say, richardgrays@live.com. Peace.